Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Terrible. How about yourself?
Did you say bearable or terrible?
I said terrible.
Oh, terrible? Well,
Terrible.
hear that.
It has been a bad 2 days. Yesterday afternoon, I was looking at emails, and then all of a sudden the screen goes blank on my cell phone. And
Oh,
then all of a sudden a number pad comes up and says, I need to enter my security code.
oh,
I say, what? I don't have a security code on my
Right.
phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, time goes by and I couple of things that I used for log on,
hmm
nothing. Oh, you're down to your last chance. So anyway, I had to blow my phone up basically yesterday afternoon. There's a way that you can do it, but you lose all your messages and all your photos on your phone, and all the basically non applications that you've added
hmm
to your phone over time. There's a lot of them that are there that are standard that
Right.
come back.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I did that. So I've been spending the last day and a half reloading applications that I've
Yeah.
had.
Stuff.
And then naturally you forget the password that you used for something that you
Right. Absolutely.
so then you're having to go back
Mhm.
and remember what your username was for that particular application, and then they send you the message, and then you got to go and look, so anyway, that's a procedure in itself.
Yes, it
so
is.
so then so now basically Emory Hospital or University, I use them as a doctor, one of my
Mhm.
doctors, several of my doctors.
Yeah.
And so they have gone to what's called MyChart, which is a
Right.
medical thing. Well, now WellStar's had it for a number of years, and I've used it, and it's just easy to log on and go on and so forth. So I go in to try to register for this thing.
hmm
You get all the way through the registration process down to where it asks you, are you a robot? And
Right.
you check the little box and say you're not a robot. And then it says that CCACP or whatever it is code that comes up, and it, the thing that jiggers, and you gotta
Yeah.
write the letters in. So you hit that little icon. It switches me over to Google. So I have got to sign into my Google account,
Ah,
which I've already signed into 100 times.
right.
So I sign into that, and it's just sits there and stares at me. It won't do anything there. So anyway, I've got to call them and say, well, you guys have made it tough.
Yeah. You mind if I ask what kind of phone do you have?
I have got what's called a +1, which is an Android
Okay.
phone. And it's a good phone. It works good most of the
Yeah.
time.
Do they have, I'm pretty sure with Google, don't they have like a cloud application like Apple? Everything on your Apple phone gets stored in the cloud. So if something actually
Well,
happens with the phone,
not everything. Okay, your messages from your messaging with, texting folks back and forth, that is not saved. That's local to your own phone. Okay. And so you lose all, but you don't lose the contact list, but you do lose the information that's stored on your phone from that. It provides some level of security for yourself because it's not, that information is not wandering around in the universe.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, but I have uploaded photos, pretty
mhm.
much all my photos to Google Cloud. So I had those available to get back.
Okay, so yeah, you were able to download a lot of that stuff again.
Right.
Yeah, I know with Apple, you can actually upload. If you go to the iCloud site, you can actually make a selection and have your emails and your text and just about
I've got all my emails are in good shape because I use Comcast. I have a Xfinity account,
Mhm.
and they're all out there. That's not a problem.
Yeah,
With that stuff. But I mean, it was just the nonsense of having to go through and load the applications.
again,
However, there was a good thing to that. The
Yeah.
fact that you oftentimes get junk
right,
applications that get just thrown on your phone. All
Right.
those disappear.
right. Yes, yes, yeah, that, yeah, it's a way of cleaning out your phone, I guess.
Oh, amen to that.
I don't know that that's quite the direction I'd like to go, though.
No, it's quick. Boom, it's gone.
I would imagine. Yeah, actually, well, I've got an Apple. Well, I've got two Apples. So I've got the county phone, which is an Apple, and I think it's just an Apple 8. And then I have a 8 Plus that is my personal phone. And Maria's got one that's a duplicate because I got, kind of a deal, where you got two lines.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth about upgrading to the new Apple 14, which is supposed to be a lot better for people who do photography and video and create content, using their phone. So I'm considering that, but
That's an investment. Well, of course, you get to pay for it on a monthly basis when you sign up for. So it's not quite as noticeable as if you have to go out and spend $1,000
right.
out of your pocket for one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, that used to be the case with Sprint, who I had been with for ever. And now they're T-Mobile. And so now T-Mobile doesn't have a contract. So I'm not exactly sure how that works with them.
Oh, yeah. But I'm very fortunate. My son pays for my cell phone service.
Yeah.
So he gave me that a couple of years ago but they had like a family plan.
Right.
And it was like $10 extra for the
Right.
line. So, it's not a big,
Right.
and I said I buy my phones anyways.
Yeah. Was he with Sprint? Because it sounds like one of their programs.
No. We're with T-Mobile right now.
Okay.
I don't know. He may have been with one of those beforehand,
Right.
and then it transferred over.
Right.
But
yeah, that's what happened to me. You see, I was with Sprint, like I said, forever, and then T-Mobile bought them, so now I'm with T-Mobile, whether I want to be or not. So,
mhm.
Good morning.
How you doing, Armando?
Fine. I work for T-Mobile for more than 3 years, and I never had problem. I just changed it because I wanted to bundle with Xfinity. So now I have Xfinity Mobile. I still know something that I don't like in that, but well, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So T-Mobile, I never had problem. That was my first carrier.
Yeah.
For 30 years or more.
All right.
I have the Xfinity. I've had it over a year, and I like it. I've had no issues,
Okay. Good.
and the price was a lot cheaper.
Is it?
No, if you don't want it to have issues, you have to pay 40 go on the unlimited something. They keep so now I had 3 gig. I'm supposed to pay $30 a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And at the end of the month, they start to send me a message. Well, you almost using all your gig. So,
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was with Sprint and I had kind of the unlimited plan, so I never worried about ever running out of data or text or anything else. So, and they were fine.
What is a gig?
It's a lot of information, is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of information. But now, a gigabyte of information is it's almost like a megabyte was 30 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's terabytes now.
Yeah, because now all your hard drives are coming in like terabyte size.
Right.
Yeah, good thing they gave me a new free cell phone, a Google Pixel 6a. That's another thing. They give me a free cell phone, so.
Good. Hopefully you can take some good pictures with it and send us some of your work. Hey, Veronica, how you doing this morning?
Oh, hi.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Hey,
I'm good.
Veronica.
Well, no, hold on.
It's Monday.
Yes.
We got somebody back there in the background. I don't know.
Mhm.
Okay, anyway.
Okay.
So today, what are we doing today?
Good morning.
Good morning. Who am I speaking to?
My name is Eloise.
Oh, hi.
Oh,
Mrs.
hi,
Rodriguez.
Eloise. How are you? I didn't see you up there on the list, but now I do. Okay, good. You doing
Just
okay this
got-
morning? You doing okay this morning?
I'm doing good. How's everybody else?
Well,
Fine.
you know, Bob's having phone issues. But I think overall,
Get it ready.
we're
ready
here.
for
We
the
made it.
dinner.
I had a hard time getting on. I used 3 different IDs, but anyway, I finally got the right one.
Oh, okay. All right.
And now I'm on my
Charles
telephone.
ID.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I told you I've been having issues getting on too.
No, Charles is fast. So I keep it, I won't touch that email.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I will, after class today, I will resend links out, okay? Off of, the class series. where I'm
Fulton
right
County evidently is wrong.
I have gone back and checked their link. And it appears to be the same that I'm sending out to you. I don't know what the difference is. But yeah, a lot of either people do really well with the Fulton County link and terrible with mine, or they do just fine with mine and terrible. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be like everything works. I don't know why. Can't explain that to you. At any rate, today, what are we going to do? I've got a couple of videos that I want you to watch. Most of them are fairly short, but we're kind of getting into this thing of the process of painting, kind of how you approach it. And so like I said, I've got a couple of different videos. There's one about doing studies and one about doing thumbnails. So it's all about foundation type stuff. How do you solve problems, or how do you not get yourself into problems in the first place? And different people have different solutions for that. So we're going to listen to a couple of different ideas. And obviously my recommendation is that, you try them, you try them, see which, what works for you. And see if you don't get a better result, by doing, some of the preliminary work that these folks are suggesting. Okay. So we're going to jump into this. Like I said, none of them are very long. I think maybe 15, 20 minutes at the most. Okay. And we're going to see 3 or 4. So I guess I have to do the share thing first. There we go. Huh?
Oh, we're gonna paint an egg.
Well, yes, we're gonna start. Actually, we're gonna start with one down below it. Okay.
Oh,
And we're gonna go back to the painting the egg. So, let me know if there's any issues with sound or anything else on this. Okay.
all right.
Because I know last week we had an issue with, everybody could see the video, but they couldn't hear it.
Now it's a
Yeah.
commercial about
So in my career,
panoramic doors.
how do I get better at understanding color and light? It seems a mystery to me.
Can everybody hear that?
Yeah, but
We hear it, but we see the ad. We're not seeing the.
Value-based thinking. Light and dark. Simple. It's a great way to start. We simplify things down. But how do you get your brain to branch into color and light? And I have found one trick that is more effective than all the others, or it's the quickest way.
Frozen screen.
to really understand color and light as fast as you.
I'm sorry, what?
I have a frozen screen right now. Oh,
Yeah.
all I'm seeing is a lady standing in front of a glass door.
Oh, so you're not on the.
Yeah. We hear the audio this time, but the video is locked frozen.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna start this again. Just tell me what you're seeing.
So in my career, many people come and ask me,
Anything?
how do I get better at understanding color and light?
Okay, so let's stop share. Okay, share screen. Okay, what are you seeing now? Are you seeing the guy sitting at a computer?
No, I'm seeing a white screen,
Yeah.
You're seeing a white screen.
just a plain
Uh-huh.
white screen right now.
With your pointer in the middle.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not seeing the actual.
Anything, no video, nothing.
Nothing.
Okay, resume share. Okay. Let's stop share. All right. So you guys seeing me now?
Yes,
Yes.
no problem.
I see John now.
And John, okay. Well, John, John is pleasant to look at.
Thank you.
So, I mean, if you got to look at somebody, I mean. All right, let's try this again.
Don't look at me. I'm old and ugly.
Yeah, Armando, yeah.
All those fat, all that stuff. On top of oh, there's the guy.
Oh, okay, now we see a guy and he's sitting at a computer, right?
Yeah,
That's
simple color.
Okay, let's back this up. And then let's tell me whether you hear what's going on.
So in my career, understanding color and light, it seems a mystery to me. And when I was growing up, it was too. I was okay with the pencil. I learned how to draw, and my whole world was formed around 2D value-based thinking. Light and dark, simple. It's a great way to start. We simplify things down, but how do you get your brain to branch into color and light? And I have found one trick that is more effective than all the others, or it's the quickest way, I think, to really understand color and light as fast as you can. So you can start applying it to any artwork you create and to be able to have really nice colors and how to pick them. But this one is the one that I'm starting this whole thing off with. And this is simple color studies. I think there's two parts to our brain. Probably why you're watching YouTube videos on how to get better at art. There's the analytical side of our brain. And the analytical side is where you think about things. This is where you take classes. This is where you learn. Most people have gone to school, and your brain is like, this is where you learn. You learn, you learn, you learn. But when it comes to art, I think there's two sides to this. There's the analytical side and there's the intuitive side. And art needs both. It's right there in the middle. How do you train your eye to really understand what looks good and why does it look good? Not just analytically, but intuitively, so that you know when you do a brush stroke, when you move a light source, when you go and do photography, how do you find what looks good versus what doesn't look good? And it's a mix of both. I remember when I first started work at Pixar many years ago, every Friday morning, we'd get together for an hour. We'd set up a still life of something like an egg in a bowl, and we would paint it. Everybody stand around it, get different angles. This was the final result of an hour. So we do it in 1 hour, quick study, color study, material study. You would see textures, you'd see light. It was amazing. And we did this week after week. Crumpled paper, a teapot, sugar cubes. It started with a sketch, started to blob in some color, get rid of the sketch, kind of refine it along. And then here's the final result. Bottles and reflective surfaces, all kinds of different things. Anything we could find. Everybody would bring in different things. and we would study subsurface scattering, the way light bounces and the way surfaces work and the way light works. And it was amazing. There's so many things that I learned to take that knowledge of lighting color and turn it into the intuitive side. I start to naturally know how to paint scratches on the surface or wrinkles or subsurface. And I get better and better at it. And it's something, it's like exercising. You start little, you're going to have to put in the work. And this is where, if you really want to understand color and light, this is the way to do it. And it can be fun and really simple. After doing this for several years, I started to want to find story in it. So I put little characters in there, put faces on things. This is a photograph of, what our setup was. And then, here's me painting it. And then I threw a little story in there. I like to call this one skinny dipping. Fast, quick, dirty, just study things, do paintings of simple things. It was super fun. And this is what I want to encourage you to do, and we will do together. Then I took this and started applying it elsewise, not just lighting a still life in front of me, but getting out into nature, going and sitting in front of a waterfall. Can I capture something that's in motion? Can I draw things? Not just draw things, not like just drawing people, again, with lines. This is studying the color and the light. What am I actually seeing? You don't see lines. When we draw a person, we're drawing lines. You're not actually seeing that. How about you draw exactly what you see? The shapes of color and light that's bouncing into your eyes. I remember walking to work every day, and I would take a picture on my phone of the different light as I walked down this big hill, and I look at it in snowy weather and in sunny weather and in the summer and in the spring and in the fall and in different type of weather conditions, and then do paintings off of that to really sink it in, to study exactly what color am I seeing? What is, this is an amazing thing that we can try. Went out into forests and then starting to learn how to see more, how to see themes of color and light, and to go, I think it would look better if there was a little bit more fog than what I'm seeing. So I'm going to paint in some more fog. I've experienced doing the illustration. I'm going to merge reality and start blending things and seeing something better. One thing that I really loved about doing color studies with other people was that we'd all be painting the same thing, and at the end we'd walk around and see what each other did, and we're like, whoa, you saw something totally different. You changed these colors. And the artist would be like, yeah, I just kind of felt like these colors would be better. And it made it look awesome. And I loved learning from other people's. The next thing with color studies is not just painting from real life, but painting other people's illustrations, painting classic paintings. I remember traveling to France and going into the Louvre and seeing people that would bring in whole canvases and paint sets, and they were allowed to sit there and copy the masters. And it's been something that's been done for hundreds of years, and I think we often forget. This is a way where we learn, do it, we copy it, we see how other artists work, we see and study. So this is superpowers we're talking here. And then I started coloring from photos. I travel and take pictures and then come back and do color studies of them. Make it really fast. Try to do something in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe an hour. It could take a couple of hours if you want, but just really fast. Study what exactly makes this appealing. Then,
Well, he's talking about doing 10 or 15 minutes for a color study like that. But the difference is he is working digitally. He is not working with actually mixing paint. Okay. So things go a little faster, sometimes on a computer when you're converting photos and things like that, because you don't have all the steps and all of the different things you've got to go through. All right, but if you spend an hour on a color study, then you're probably fine. And just like thumbnails, okay, which tend to be small, color studies tend to be very small. They're probably like 1/4 to 1/3 of the size of the actual painting, or even smaller. If you're planning on blowing this up on a big, 40 by 60 canvas, a 4 by 6 inch, color study is fine, and it scales up. But yeah, just keep in mind, he's doing a little different thing, but it still applies to what we're talking about as well.
if pandemic time, this is perfect. Study off of photos, take a photograph, and then try to make a copy of it. Where can it go? This is where it gets exciting, because I think one of the things that's very discouraging for artists is, you start drawing and you're like, I want to do amazing concept art. I want to do illustrations, things that inspire me from movies. And I have terrible stick figures. So where can it go? Doing little studies, doing your push-ups, doing your sit-ups, eventually will lead to greater tone and strength and muscles here. It'll switch your knowledge from analytical into that intuitive side. And this is where you can really thrive and it can be exciting. So for me, I started doing color studies and eventually got to the point where I could take a composition and I could color it lots of different ways. And these were 10 minutes each, you know, and learn to steal light from other photographs and apply it to your situation and be able to take one thing and see it from all different types of light sources. You can make illustrations, the same illustration done multiple different ways to really explore this. And this can be fast and iterative. It doesn't have to be a painstakingly long process. You can do it really quickly. And that's why I think this is the best way to learn about color and light. With this group that got together, we would eventually try new things to go, well, now you've studied all these real world objects. Why not take the line art from a coloring book, you know, or from a children's story and turn it into something that the world has never seen? And this to me is exciting. And it got to the point that, you know, in my work, I was working on Ratatouille and I got the opportunity to light sequences that didn't have any art that went along with it. And I got to do my own color keys. This was so amazing. Or I even went back just for the fun of it and went back to a sequence I had worked on way back in my career and redid new color keys to go, what would it look like if it was done differently, if it was thought at a different time of day? This type of stuff is super fun. You know, take that same idea, spend more time, refine more details, and build full illustrations. So this is kind of where it can go. I went freelance and I got to paint the cover of the Lego magazine. You know, it went worldwide. It was just so cool. And it was just from learning to understand light and color and how to paint faster, better, cleaner, you know, to refine this process. And it's really the same process that we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you what I do so that you can learn to do things like this. So let's get down to it. What are we going to paint? So the best way to start with this is to go really simple. Find an object, a simple object, put it somewhere, take a picture of it. We're going to copy this picture. A banana, an apple, an egg. Eggs are fantastic. They're really simple shapes. We're studying color and light and how light wraps around surfaces and how light affects surfaces and their local color. Start really simple with this. Put it in sunlight. What does it do? What are the colors? What is the difference? Take that same apple that was on the table and put it on the carpet in the sunlight. The highlights, the bounce light, the light side, the shadow side. What does light and color do? Looking for just pretty objects in your house might lead you astray. But let's avoid noise. This would be a nightmare to paint because there's just tons of noise in this and you can't really see the light and color. You're going to get lost into the details of the object itself. Surprisingly, something as simple as like a shoe sounds like it would be great to paint, but careful, this could be a trap too of shapes, forms, and texture. Let's avoid that. We're not seeing a lot of interesting light and color on this. So until you're better at the basics, I would avoid something like this. Eventually, sure, if you want to paint a shoe. Avoiding things flatly lit. You know, there's a lot of texture. We're not doing texture studies quite yet. We will get to that, but as a beginning, let's start with something really, really simple. Really cool texture, the way these vines grow up this tree, but no, this would take forever. Just shoot me now. No, thank you. Let's come back to the banana. Simple objects. Banana is a yellow object. Look at what the light does as it wraps around. We could do this. A banana in sunlight. A banana close to sunlight, but out of the sunlight. A salt lamp. This could be a really cool one. We should definitely do something like this. This one would be a great one to paint because there's interesting color. Now, there's texture in here, but we're going to learn to simplify down to light and color. In the end, I think that great starting point will be an egg. There's a lot of interesting things that are happening with color and light in this, and it might not seem exciting to paint, but trust me, let's give this one a try. So I'm going to stop here, and then in the next video, we're going to paint this egg. So thanks for watching. I hope this is useful.
It look like an egg. It look like at the top of my head. No, it's not exciting.
What about the top of your head?
The egg. look like the top of my head.
Brad
So-
Raffensperger is not who you think he is. He put
Okay, so you're comparing the top of your head to an egg.
Mhm.
Okay, I've seen the top of your head. It's not, yeah, it's a little too fuzzy for an egg. So, but anyway. All right, so let's go to the study, okay?
No, John and Robert, they have hair. I wonder what they use, what they put on to keep the hair. Mine's going away.
The name of this game is make a copy of this without color picking from the original. This whole thing is about studying color and light. So let's see how much we can do with our own eyes to observe.
Okay, so everybody can hear and see this, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, can you make it full screen?
Well, I was gonna try that, okay? And see how
Conditions.
successful
Index
we are
Layer 2
with it.
can match and identify any color with a simple scan.
All right,
So in
how are we doing so far?
Not,
Not good.
we have half an image.
Half of an image.
Yeah, we,
Yeah, we got his back and a list
we,
of,
we see the menu on the right side of all the different videos. We don't s- But it's cut off. The whole thing is like pushed to the left.
Oh, okay. So you're not seeing it as a full screen.
no,
Or no,
Something is definitely, okay, now that I've reduced it back to the
it's the
regular
one that I'm
size.
starting this whole thing off with.
Yeah.
And this is
Now what?
that's okay.
It's okay. And so
Right.
everybody's reading the screen. It says simple color studies, right?
yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I guess this is the way we're gonna watch it, because, yeah.
simple color studies. I think there's two parts to our brain. Probably why you're watching YouTube videos on how to get better at art.
What I'm
There's
trying
the
to do
analytical
is
side
I'll
of it.
try to
And the analytical side is
pull
where
the
you
screen
think about
out.
things. This is where you take classes. This is where you learn.
to
No.
be-
The
Huh?
brain is like, this is where you learn.
Same.
You learn. But when it comes to art, I think there's two sides to this. There's the analytical side and there's the intuitive side. And art needs both. It's right there in the middle. How do you train your eye to really understand what looks good and why does it look good? Not just analytically, but intuitively, so that you know when you do a brush stroke,
Could have
when
been,
you move a light.
let's see. Try to get past.
This is the same video, I think. the
I
first-
first started
No, it's
work
not
at Pixar
exactly.
many years ago. Every Friday morning, we'd get together for an hour. We'd set up a still life of something like an egg in a bowl, and we would paint it. Everybody stand around it, get different angles. You know, this was the final result of an hour. So we do it in 1 hour, quick study,
see.
color study, materials.
Yeah, it seems to be almost identical. Why color study? Wait a minute, okay. Well,
Get rid of
that's
the
because we're
smudge,
not on the
and
right
refine it
video.
up.
Okay. Let's see if it will get us to the right video.
The name of this game is
Starting simple.
make a copy of this without color picking from the original. This whole thing is about studying color and light. So let's see how much we can do with our own eyes to observe all the details of the light and color that are in this egg and make a copy of it as quickly as we can. So, all right, let's see how fast we can do this as a color study. Take a screen capture of this image, you know, when you see it full screen, and then save it, bring it into Photoshop, open it up. Now, one little trick, to make Photoshop easier. Select all and copy. And then when you go and make a new document, it will be 1920 by 1080 to match, create. I'm not going to hit paste though. This is going to be my copy. I'm going to go to the same zoom level that this is. This is 66.67. Okay, 66.67, just that seems like a nice size. And I'm going to just gonna line this up and start painting. First thing, I'm gonna go to my paintbrush. I've got my favorite brush already loaded. I talked about in my technical video. This is a very nice, just kind of soft textured brush. It's really cool. It's fast. It's got some nice texture to it. This is what we're going to be using. So what I don't want to do is look at little details. I want to make sure that I'm getting rid of all the white in this and starting fresh. Let's imagine that this image had to be pixelated down to 1 pixel. What color would it be? And I would blur my eyes, and if I were to zoom out, I would say, I think that this image was majorly kind of a tan type color. So I'm going to try to visually, without color picking from this one, look at a color that I think is kind of representative of that color. Quick little Photoshop tip. Command delete will fill with the background color. Option delete, fill with the foreground color. It's very similar on Windows, since most of you are probably using Windows. It's one of the Option, Command, Control, Windows, and the delete key will fill the whole layer. Notice I'm painting on the background layer. We're not using any separate layers. Okay, this is not dark enough. Once I see this, I'm going to fill again. This is, how about that? That would be my one color. Second color is an egg color. So now I'm going to this brush rather large and try to look where this egg in relation. It's a little bit offset. Probably around here. It's my guess. Now, you can color pick from your own painting, but not from the one we're copying. So in this, I can hold down the Option key for me. Again, sorry for non-Mac people. I'm just kind of like painting, all right, this seems to be where my egg will be. And then I've got this third color. So 1 color, 2 colors, third one will be this big highlight here. So I'm going to just pick a big highlight color. Use the bracket keys to make this bigger and go, this is my third. Actually, I'm noticing a lot of blue in this. So I'm going to pull around the color wheel and put just a little bit of blue into this. This is my third color. All right, now let's go on to the next level. The egg itself. What colors do I see in the egg? I see light. Okay, let's study the light. We're studying color and light. It's just a white surface. There's light that's coming. This was done on my kitchen table. From behind me, there was sunlight bouncing into the room. And then in front of me was a big window out to outside. So the blue here is coming from the sky and the light of the sky. And then this is coming from bounce light from sunlight. So the front of this egg is warm, which I'm kind of close to. It looks like I'm going to be a little bit less saturated and a little bit more yellow. And yeah, something like that. And then the other side is a cooler tone. So I'm going to make this a little bit cooler, desaturate, pull towards cool, and just let's see what happens here. I'm going to have to paint in the shadows first. Relative color. When I'm seeing colors next to each other, they can really be tricky. I'm going to make a whole video, I think, on relative color because there's some tricky stuff. So maybe I should get the shadow in here under this egg first. So I'm going to select the color of the egg and just make a darker, more saturated version. I'm noticing over here that there's a lot of warmth. So let's make this, as it goes into the shadow, let's make this more saturated and kind of blend this out. Also, for relative color, I want to get this contact shadow, this kind of occlusion area under the egg. So I'm going to try to stay holistic to this whole thing. It's like try to paint in these details. And it's really saturated down under there. So let's make sure we get some good saturation. I paint hard when I want it opaque, and then I can do nice and light to kind of blend off these colors and try to see the edges here. And select something even darker, make my brush smaller with the bracket keys here, paint in that contact shadow. And now I'm going to come back to the egg and be like, I think there's a little bit darker wraps around that dark point really kind of wraps around the edge here. And there's a lot of saturation right there in the shadow, right about here. And being really loose with this, being really scribbly and not really caring about the details. This is not about the exact shapes. This is about the color. Of course, I'm noticing a really bright highlight. It's kind of in the cool tones here. Right about there, and this light kind of wraps around the edge here. And it wraps over the top. Now I'm going to go back to my mixer brush and blend these things together. Mixer brush I talked about in a former video, kind of technical setup, but you can kind of smush those colors kind of like it is in the original here. The egg has very soft transitions, so I can make these colors and just kind of blend these around until it smooths out some of this painting. This is a fantastic tool, by the way. When I discovered this, I was just overjoyed. I used to use Corel Painter until I discovered that Photoshop could do all the same things, and it saves me a lot of time because I work in Photoshop a lot, you know, for everything else. But Painter used to have beautiful blending tools, and I'm sure it still does, but I can only pay for so much software. So I'm going to use this. So I found the mixer brush. This made me be sadly very bound to Adobe. I both love and hate them. They have great tools, but I'm bound to their subscription methods.
Everybody has
Not
that
always
relationship with
A
them.
happy place for me.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Okay, if you can see that my process here is to start big, work smaller. So start with the biggest colors, the biggest details, and then just kind of work down. So there's a nice hard edge on the edge of this egg, so I can select this color here, and then with a smaller brush, kind of go back in and paint in the tighter details, the edge of this egg here. This is really my quickest, simplest method. Again, we're all on one layer. We're staying really, really simple with this. And we're trying to, as quickly as possible, observe what's happening in this painting. So now if I sit back and I blur my eyes, I'm not going to worry too much about the shape of this egg. First thing I can see is that my shadow area is not dark enough. And it's not big enough. So I'm going to, again, my brush bigger, paint really gently in here, just kind of get a darker core shadow, smaller. It's really on this side that it really gets dark, kind of wraps around underneath the edge of the egg. I think it kind of goes up over top. Noticing here too, this cool blue kind of wraps really far around. So, oops. Select this color. Get that cool bluish tone. Wrap this as far around as I see it there. This is a kind of discovery process, a push, a pull, a push, a pull. This needs to be even darker. Down underneath. So the darkest kind of core spot is right about there. In between the two areas of light. There's light coming from this side, light coming from this side. I'm also noticing, now that I'm kind of getting the egg a little bit closer, it's not looking great, but I'm on the right path, I think. I can kind of blend, switch back to the mixer brush here and blend some of these tones again. Soften this out to make it look as much like the original here as I can. About scribbling, blending, knowing how to get control of the brushes and paint in details. The other thing I'm noticing is the blue on the edge, this blue fringe from the sky. This light is so intense that it's clipping from a less intense color blue, and then it gets brighter as it goes out. So I don't have any of that blue in mind. So let me go ahead and pick a cool color blue here. I'm going to guess what color this is and just kind of scribble in, make this brush nice and big, and just the lightest of touch. Add a little kind of bluish fringe. It doesn't bleed much onto the table. Most of the table is very warm colors. Go back to my mixer brush. Let's blend this together. Just smear these colors and see if I can get something that's kind of similar to the original. So we get a blue fringe, almost not blue enough, strangely. Switch back to my new brush. A little bit more blues on the edge here. I'm already seeing there's other colors that I need. As I focus from big to small, I'm realizing that this background color is just too simple. There's some darker colors, some darker tones in this. I'm going to select that tone that I found under the egg and start getting a little bit of the texture of the table into this. I need some of that because it's messing with my eyes. That again, relative colors next to each other. I need some texture in here to kind of vignette the edge of this and make this look as close as possible to this, to the original. It's all about kind of observing. Now I can observe littler details. There's a red splotch over here. There's kind of the tones are shifting. So I might add a little bit more red in here and try to get that similar blob of color over there. There's some reds down here, just the lightest of touches. I can see in this that there's the reflection of the egg, and then there's the contact shadow. So I'm going to have to pay attention to that and add in the little reflection, the way the light kind of goes reds, it goes yellows to oranges to reds into the, you know, that dark black as it gets more and more saturated. So paint in here, this is a little bit too red, some oranges in there, and then it goes really dark just for a small amount. It's a nice dark contact shadow for this whole thing. There's a nice hard rim that's coming from this kind of cool tones over here of this light that's really catching quite far. It's a very thin line that wraps around this egg. Also, just paint in this super bright highlight. I want to see all those colors together so that I can sit back and go, does this look the same? No, you know, this egg, my egg's too big. There's I'm almost seeing some like greens through here. So I'm going to select this color, and instead of going all the way to green, I'm just kind of leaning the color wheel here towards green and try scribbling in some colors into this. Let's see if that, yeah, that's looking kind of similar tones. It's like a bluish green. Interesting thing to note that on the color wheel, you don't always have to go to the prime colors, just kind of lean things a little bit. You know, it's still orange. It's a desaturated orange, tends to look kind of cool and greenish in comparison to the other colors if I get these tones right. So keep painting, did a little bit too far. Painting on this egg to try to find these tones. And my egg is just too big. So I'm gonna etch away, trying to get that shape right. Or closer at least to this original. I'm gonna go ahead and paint in a little bit of that reflection too. So nice little tiny brush. I'm gonna just paint sort of what I see going on here. It's very soft. A little bit of the edge of the reflection of that egg. Go back to my mixer brush, smaller. Starting really big with all my brushes, and then as I'm working closer to these details, I smooth them out, make them smaller details. This side of the egg is rather flat. So right here. Trying to do this whole thing in real time, not speeding any of this up. You can kind of see this whole process of the way thought processes work, of painting, blending, finding those details. Blur my eyes quite a bit. Push some of this light touch in here. You know what I think I need now? I think I need these lines. So I'll switch back to my drawing brush. I'll just select one of these colors here, maybe make it a little bit darker and start painting in some of those lines that help define what this background is. Not worrying too much about being exact here. I just want to see if I'm on the right track of making this look closer and closer to the original. One nice dark edge thing. This is a color study. What am I gaining from this? What am I learning through this process? What is the light actually doing? I think it's really interesting seeing that the texture in here goes a little bit darker blue as the light affects it. It's like over here, the darks go more saturated in the warms, but over here they go more saturated in the cools. So as I see that texture come across, it's kind of blending into the wood grain of my table. Its edges. Still not dark enough over here. So I'm seeing all these colors start to come together, and it's very dark in here. It's really, really dark. Look at this. There's some interesting saturated colors here too. It's really blending down, and it's a little bit more yellow. Sit back, blur my eyes. This isn't dark enough through here too. I think this could be even more green saturated, a little bit darker. Surprising how difficult an egg can be. So many subtle details, so many things to learn from. This wraps further around the egg. Back to my blender. Can I get closer? I think now I'm seeing that first my egg is in the right shape and the right proportion where it's at. Mine's lower down than this, but I'm just gonna kind of work. There's more yellows through here. It's like my tones are still not quite yellow enough. So let's select that. I'm going to shift the hues just slightly by painting ever so slightly with this more yellow tone, just on top of everything. Well, light there. It's always this push and pull. Saturated, desaturated, lighter, darker. Just keep observing. What do I observe? Still see more blue fringe right here. So let's go ahead and make this blue. Let's select tone right on the edge. A little bit more blue. I'll paint this ever so slightly in. Very, very light touch to try to get these colors. Smaller brush details. Notice how much I kind of lean on this key going to the color picker from my painting to smooth out details. We're coming to an end here, I think. Good enough for what this is. This is supposed to be a quick color study. kind of like clean up these lines. These colors, stylistic details. It's really quite a bright edge here.
Notice how he's working on the edge and the highlight is changing from like
Nice.
a
Brighter
red
highlight.
base
I think
to a
those
blue
pure
base.
white.
So what
Very
you're
close.
doing is you're getting a shift in temperature
And
in those light edges.
maybe I'm just wasting time here, but just trying to clean up these edges just to feel kind of like the original. It is a really, really dark, almost black, right there. It bleeds out just a little bit. And the color of the egg actually kind of in these cooler tones. It's down into here. Perspective is not great. And for the smallest little things, is this close enough? I think that we should probably call this a day and say, this was a good study. What did I learn from this? I learned that relative color with grays really makes a difference, that these tones right in here, seeing this portion of the egg and trying to find that edge is really key. That was the trickiest part for me. I kept kind of pushing and pulling, and as I still doing it, I'm like painting as I'm talking about my summary here. It's just finding those tones. It's all about finding those colors. Like, is it dark enough? Is it bright enough? What is going on in there? This is the core shadow between the light and the dark, and like looking at each of the details. I think my color is still a little bit off on the top of the egg. It should be a little bit less saturated up through here. I could do this forever, but the good thing with these color studies is to put a timer on yourself and you go, and I'm done. That's as far as I need to go. No longer than an hour. Just keep kind of pushing and pulling as fast as you can go. And then we'll, learn something from this, throw it away, do another. All right. I think we did it.
Okay, yes, we did it. All right. Any thoughts about watching that?
He was pushing photorealism there towards the end.
Yes, he was. And everything he was doing digitally, you can do in paint. And it's the same questions, it's the same process of observation. Now, I've worked both digitally and, in both of the applications he was talking about, which was, in the old days, they called it Fractal Painter, and also in Photoshop. And they were both great applications. Photoshop is pretty complicated. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Fractal Painter, on the other hand, is like Photoshop on steroids by 10. Okay. There's so much more you could do with Fractal Painter than you could ever really get done in Photoshop. He made a comment earlier about, beginning to work more directly in Photoshop. And his reasoning was sound in the sense that most things that in most commercial applications that you run into, like going to print shops, things like that, or going to digital video editing or whatever, they're going to be using Adobe products. And so there's an easier transfer, you know, from Photoshop, which is an Adobe program, to everything else that you're going to find out there in the world. You know, Fractal Painter was a Corel based application, and you know, you get very similar results, but in the real world, you know, trying to transfer that to a print shop or something like that, a lot of times you would have discrepancies with your color, and your color would shift when they took it into Adobe applications. It wouldn't be exactly what you put down there. So, you know, it's either one is good. And if you ever wanted to play on computers and actually paint on them, or iPads, because they do actually have paint applications for iPads now, you just get a stylus and, you know, you can go to town. It's just like painting with a brush. You just don't need anything to clean up afterward, which is good. But again, you know, the observations he was making was, you know, about value, which he kept calling tone, which annoyed me a little bit. But he was also talking about, you know, value, the actual hue that he was seeing, whether it was more green, more yellow, more red. And then obviously the saturation, whether it was highly saturated or more muted, as well as the temperature, you know, relative temperature. Is it warmer? Is it cooler? And how you could really get the most out of that video, if you wanted to go back and rewatch it, was don't watch so much him moving the pen, you know, on the actual painting, but watch that color selector and where it was, and then how it would shift in colors sometimes. Because that really gave you a lot of insight into what he was doing as far as, you know, picking those colors and what he was seeing. And, you know, I know it's not the most interesting video in the world to watch, but it would be worth watching 2 or 3 times. And again, you know, just keeping an eye on that color selector and seeing how he was shifting it. Because as he was doing that on the computer, you could do the same thing on your palette, you know, by pulling in a little more red or a little more blue, a little more, you know, if you're mixing with primary and secondaries, you can pull in violets and greens and oranges. If you're only working in primary colors, red, yellow, blue, then you can actually mix them. But, you know, doing color studies, you know, small scale color studies before you get into doing paintings of a final nature are really, really valuable. And again, it's kind of like going outdoors and doing plein air. You know, you're going outdoors to do plein air, and what is plein air? It's basically a color study. You know, you're working generally smaller in scale. You're responding to what you're seeing, you know, immediately at the time, and following what the light is doing, and trying to get as much of that down as you can. Okay. And it's not a final painting. What it is it's, we hope, a fairly accurate representation of what you were seeing, you know, the light doing, you know, on the different objects that you were seeing outside. And then obviously you can go back to the studio and you could do another painting, you know, and actually have a good, accurate, you know, painting of what you were seeing. You know, if you shot photographic reference to help you with proportion and scale and where things were, and then use your actual painting that you did plein air as a color reference. You know, it's like, okay, how saturated was that color? What do I have here? You know, and then match that. Because the camera isn't going to give you the color. It's not going to give you the value range. It's not going to give you those shifts in temperature that you see, you know, in real life. And that's the thing in painting from photos alone. That's kind of a shortcoming, you know, because again, it doesn't have the subtleties that your eye actually sees. So So making observations, doing color studies and things, it's a good learning tool, even if you never take it to a final painting. I have many friends out there in the art world. They may not do a final, like a finished painting every day. But what they do is they'll get up and they'll dedicate like 2 hours of their day to doing a color study of something. And, they'll work small, but they'll crank out these color studies. And some of these things are beautiful. They're just like little gems. And no, it's not real tight and photographic, but they're beautiful paintings because they've made really good, significant observations about color and value. And it trains their eye to see that stuff, and that's kind of where most of you need to go, is you really need to observe as much from life as possible and try to actually capture that, on a canvas, and get away from painting strictly from photos, or at least if you're going to only work from photos, then understand that you can't trust them as far as the color goes. And because you can't trust them, to be absolutely accurate, then free yourself up, and don't worry about trying to copy the photo so much, be more inventive, and playful with your color, push things, as far as temperature and colors that you see, things like that. But keep the proportion and the value structure in place and intact, because if you'll just do that, you can make anything any color you want to, right? As long as the values work. I keep saying over and over and over again in classes that color is actually really irrelevant, when you come down to it as a painter. It's really all about value, and that frees you up in so many ways, to really make a painting your own. So, anybody got anything to say about that? Questions? Have I put everybody to sleep?
I didn't understand in the first video when he photographed the same scene in different seasons. I think what his angle is there.
Well, what he did is he took the same location.
Right.
And what we saw was not the photographs. What we saw was the little, color studies that he did.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, if you go to, if I went out on my back porch, okay, it's going to look radically different today because we're in the middle of fall than it would be in a month or two from now, when all the leaves have fallen off and it's all kind of gray, right? And then a couple of months later, early springtime, I'm going to start seeing different colors. And so that very same scene, is going to change through the seasons. And that's what he was studying, was the light and sort of the palette, from those different seasons, in that particular example. So. Anybody else? Armando, what do you think? You're really quiet.
I think he's off frying his eggs or something.
Yeah, I think, he's off making a sandwich. Eloise, you got anything? Yeah, yes, you heard your name. Okay.
I was feeling an orange.
You were peeling an orange? Okay.
Mhm.
So what did you think about that video? Did you bother to even watch most of it, or?
No, but I don't know. To me, it's not exciting to paint an egg.
Well, it may not be exciting, but whether you're painting eggs or oranges or, a glass of wine or anything else, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to look at and identify color, value, intensity, right? Temperature. See, and it's
Yes,
crap.
maybe, but there's not that many colors.
Oh, well, you
Well,
see,
no.
if you would have watched that video, you would have found that actually there's every color in there.
Just the shadow from the light, that's it.
No, no, it's not, because there were shifts in that egg. There were areas that were more blue or violet. There were areas that were more green. There were areas that were more brown, or you could call it orange. Right?
Green,
Or
how
yellow.
about green?
Yeah, there was green in there too.
Yeah, a lot of green.
Yeah. You know, now all the color, on that egg, for the most part, was pretty desaturated. It was all kind of in those gray ranges.
Mhm.
But grays, you can take any of the primary, secondary colors and gray them down. It doesn't change it from being that color. Okay, it's still a greenish gray, or a bluish gray, or a orangish gray, which tends to be tan, right? Or yellowish gray, which tends to be kind of ochre. So, yeah, I mean, they're all there, and it's being able to look at it and identify it. So, Eloise, what were your thoughts?
I had to step away, so I'm gonna have to catch the rerun. I had someone here trying to help me solve my plumbing problem, so I missed it.
Okay, and I don't know whether you caught this part or not, but my suggestion is that you do rewatch it. Maybe rewatch it 2 or 3 times and slow it down, back it up.
Mhm.
Okay, but the thing is, as you do that, don't focus on what he's doing on the little thumbnail. Focus on the color selector. That round, disc, and the little bar at the top where he could slide to add more blue, more red, and shift that. And kind of see where he's picking colors from, and how it's changing that color selector, as far as the base color, whether it's more blue, more green, more red, right? And you'll be able to see it pretty easily in there. So, and again, translating that into actual paint is just think of your palette as that color wheel. If you've got the
Yeah, but if you were painting, that's what I didn't like about it being Photoshop was to me, if you're painting, you can't, what do? You just keep layering and going back and layering and going back and layering.
Yeah. Yeah, just
So-
well, I mean, the way he did that, it's, I mean, you could do the same thing in oil paint or acrylic, or even, you can't quite do it in watercolor because you have to save.
No, right.
But it's the same thinking process, right?
I can see the thinking process to see the different colorations, but like I say, predicting watercolor, but even like acrylics and oil, you have to go back. And I said, you just see, oh, that should have more of a tinge of green. You just go, then you paint over, and I should have a little more orange, and you paint over.
Well, here's the thing: you with the painting process, okay. And what are we talking about? We're talking about oils, acrylics, pastels, right?
Yeah,
Wash,
yeah.
any kind of opaque medium.
Right, correct.
You're painting.
Right, correct. Right.
Yeah.
I know watercolor. You're not.
Yeah, and in any of those mediums, as you're painting, you always have 2 choices. You can either use that medium full strength and opaquely and just totally remix a color, or if you see, well, okay, it's probably the right value, close to the right temperature, but I think it's got a little more saturation of green. So mix a green, but apply it very thin as a glaze. And you see, then you can tweak it. So you can move it just a little bit, right? And get it to where you want it. And if you're working in acrylic, then you can do it multiple times in a very short period of time and get it almost pretty much so dead on. If you're doing it in oil, then it's a little different problem because you can't really glaze while the underlying layers are wet, but you can work directly into it. So you can pick up a little bit of green in your brush and go back into that area and just, you know, work it into the paint that's already there. And again, begin to shift it slightly. See? And just fine tune it. So you've got options, you know, based on
Well,
the that you're working with.
That's what I find difficult as far as, because I work primarily in oils.
Mhm.
And is you give it a little bit of a touch of this or a little bit of a touch of that, and you don't really see it sometimes on when you actually apply it to the image that you're painting.
Right.
And then then you do a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you're over the limit.
Yeah.
Basically, so to speak. I mean, and that's what I find challenging. I won't say difficult, challenging.
Well, and again, and we've talked about this tool before. It's called a color isolator, right? Which is nothing more than a gray card with a little hole cut in the center. It can be
Right.
round, square, doesn't really matter what it is. And as you're working that color into there, stop. When you think, okay, it needs a little more green, so put a little more green in there. And if it doesn't quite look like what you're hoping it will look like, then take that color isolator, put over it, and look at it through that little opening and see, am I really seeing it green? Is it green enough? Okay. And if it looks right, isolated like that, what that tells you is, oh, okay, the relationship between that color and the colors surrounding it are not correct. See? And so the problem isn't the green. The problem may be the color that's next to it is either too warm or too cool, too intense, or too, you know, too desaturated, muted, right? And so then you can make those adjustments, you know, for each of those areas. I mean, you've got all these tools that you can use to help you, you know, and it's just a matter of slowing down and, you know, making an observation, thinking about it, and making a choice. Okay, do I need more green? You know, and you know, it will take you some time. None of that is going to be fast, but you know, I mean, I overshoot. You know, putting too much intensity in colors all the time. You know, it's a constant basis. But the good news is, and I keep saying this to all of you, if I'm going to make an error, okay, in either value, intensity, or temperature, okay, in intensity, I would always rather have it a little bit too dark than too light. If I'm going to make a error in the intensity level of a color, again, I would rather have it a little too intense than not intense enough. And then in temperature, I would always rather be a little bit generally cooler than warmer. And the reason I would like to, you know, if I had to make an error, I would err in those directions, is that like in value, I can always just lighten it just a little touch, okay? In saturation, I can always mix a gray, that's the right value, and just add in a little bit of gray and desaturate the color just a little bit. And it's a lot easier to go that direction than it is to, you know, add more intensity to a color or to, you know, cool a color off. You know, it's much easier because like in temperature, the reason I would rather be a little bit cooler is that the warm colors will shift it warmer, but they'll do it more slowly. The cool colors, if you add just a little bit of blue or a little bit of purple or a little bit of green to something, it's going to move that color very quickly, you know, to the cool side, because they tend to be, one, darker, and number two, the pigmentation and the saturation of the color is much higher, you know, in a cool color than they tend to be in warm colors. So You know, so starting off a little too cool and warming it up is, to me, easier than going the opposite way. So anyway, anybody else?
Nope.
No? Okay. All right. You ready to go for another video?
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, last Friday, I mentioned you the element of R, and you told me you're gonna talk about that on Monday, but I don't know which Monday.
What did you ask me on Friday?
About the, I was reading on Google about the element of art.
No, what I told you is that we had talked about it on Monday.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. And there's, there's basically, generally we say there's 5 of them, right?
hmm?
And we've been talking about them all day. So you've got the hue, write that down, which is HUE.
H-U-E, whoever.
Okay, and then put a little equals mark next to it.
Uh-huh.
And then after the equals mark, write color.
Yeah.
Okay, hue equals color. That's all it is. Okay. And if you want to go equals primary and secondary colors. Because guess what? There's only 6. Okay, that's it.
I mean, 6 colors?
Yeah.
Oh,
In reality, there's only 6 colors, okay? It's either going to be red, yellow, or blue, green, orange, or violet.
mhm. Yeah.
And if you're talking about browns and grays and things like that, all you're talking about is a desaturated version of any of those 6 colors. Okay, that's it. All right, so there's you, hue.
Sure.
And then the next thing is value.
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 Yeah, no, I got that one, value.
Well, okay, yeah, okay, equals how dark or how light a color is. Okay, you got that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next is intensity.
Mm.
Okay, intensity. And that equals how pure any of those 6 colors are. I mean, when you put your paintbrush down on a painting, are you using straight yellow or straight orange right out of the tube? Well, if you are, then you're using really, really highly saturated or very intense color.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say that you take that yellow and you add a little bit of like
Blue.
a blue or green to it. Well, a blue, for example, right?
Turn into brown.
Huh?
Might turn into brown, no?
Well, no, if you took yellow and you added blue to it, then you're going to shift it to green, right? Because yellow and green make blue. Or I'm sorry, yellow and blue make green. Anyway.
Now, for what I observe, each artist has kind of different opinions of those things.
Not really. I mean, we're talking about really pretty basic stuff. And anybody who tells you that yellow and blue put together will not make green is, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what paint tubes they're working with, but it's never worked any other way for me.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about the element of art. Some people that have one thing, other people so.
Well, it depends too on whether you're drawing or whether you're painting. I mean, there are more than 5, okay? You know, I mean, we could get into patterns and textures and, you know, stuff like that.
Mm.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if you break it down, there are really 5 for a painter, anybody who's actually painting. If you're a sculptor, then yeah, it's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah.
Because then you can talk about form and weight and volume and, you know, and the same thing in drawing. But anyway, okay, so we're through the first 3. All right, the next one is temperature. And this is the thing that makes people crazy, okay? Because you could generalize and say that red, yellow, and orange are warm, and that blue, green, and violet are cool, right? You could, right? But only sometimes, okay?
Yeah.
Because there are violets that can be warm.
You have a good day, sir.
There are greens that can be warm, right?
Mhm.
But a conversation about temperature is always what we call relative. It depends on what you're comparing it to, okay? So if I have a kind of a pinkish or mauve kind of color, and then I have a like a very deep blue, but it's very bright, the cooler between the 2 of those is going to be the blue. Okay, even though that mauve is a little bit kind of to the purple side, it's going to be warmer than the blue. Okay, and so again, temperature is one of those things you can't say that it's you know always going to be warmer or always going to be cooler. You know, it depends on what it's sitting next to. Okay.
Now, is temperature and texture almost the same?
No, texture is a whole totally different thing. Texture is it smooth or is it bumpy? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a rough looking surface or is it a very smooth surface? Right? So like if you're painting your face, right?
Mhm.
You know, and then you're painting a young girl's face, you know, say who's in her teens or something like that. If you make her face have as much texture in it as yours would, then you're going to age her. You're going to make her look older. So you have to blend more. You have to keep it smoother. Where if I'm painting you, you know, I can have not as soft transitions in color when I paint you as I do her. Okay. Or me, you know, I mean, I've got kind of a textural face too, you know. So again, you know, it's like how smooth does it look, you know, that's texture, right? Which is not part of the 5 that we generally worry about. Okay. So we got 4 of those. The last one that we worry about though is hard and soft edges. And this is where you'll get some pushback and discussion about whether or not some painters consider that you know part of the 5 basic elements, you know, of art, you know, because some painters, you know, basically paint with generally hard edges, right? They don't blend, they don't soften an edge. You know, where I guess if you're doing, you know, representational, you know, realistic art, you know, like portraits and things like that, then you're going to have to blend those edges. You're going to have some edges that are sharp and some edges that are very soft, right? Unless you're doing, you know, like an impressionistic painting, And you see the Impressionists didn't spend a lot of time blending. Not by taking the two paint, pieces and pulling them together and blurring them. What they would do is they would change the value to be closer to the paint sitting next to it so that there wasn't a lot of contrast, and that softened that area. And that's the way the Impressionists handled it. So it's a little bit different approach.
So what about line, shape, and space?
Well, okay, or form, and those are all on the drawing side.
Oh, the drawing sound, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're elements, okay, but it's not something that as a painter, and see, we're talking about painting here. We're not talking about drawing. We're not talking about sculpting, right? Yeah, I mean, there are more out there, but we deal basically with 5.
Yeah, they put it together. That's why I'm asking you.
I'm sorry, what?
They put it together in that article, that order.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can have pattern, you can have texture, right? You can have line, you can have what they call tone, or I really categorize tone as value. I think the word tone is misused most of the time. Let's see what else. There are more. You have what we call volume or weight, right? And you need all of those. But you need the 5 I'm talking about more if you're painting, and the others become more important if you're drawing. Okay. You see, because even, because you're drawing with a pencil or a piece of charcoal or something like that, you can make different kinds of lines, right? And if you're toning or creating a value in an area, how you lay that material down, whether you lay it down like in one direction, or whether you change the direction every time that you put down a line and build up the value, you're going to have a texture there. Now, if you take it and you rub it all back, then you're going to, blur that texture, and it's going to become a relatively smooth area. But it's comparatively, you have very soft, smooth areas and very kind of highly textured areas where there's a lot of contrast. Yeah. And depending on whether you're trying to draw hair, and hair can have a lot more texture in it than if you're trying to draw the skin on, like somebody's cheek, right? Then you're going to want to make it a little softer and a little bit smoother. Okay. Any other questions about that?
No, thank you.
All right. Happy to clarify that for you.
I don't want John and Bob get bored.
You want to what?
I don't want John and Bob get bored.
Oh, you don't want to? Okay. Well, I don't think you have to worry about that. Okay. So if they get bored, they'll let me know. Right?
Yep, we'll let you know.
Okay. Let's see what time it is. Wow. Okay. We have gone through a lot of the day today. Let us very quickly. I'm going to skip that one. Yeah, I want to play this one. Okay, and this will be the last video we play today, because I'm sure we'll have something to say about it. And it's kind of this stupidly simple trick. If it were changed. Yes.
How do you go from this, a blank page in your sketchbook, to this, a finished painting with a complex composition? In this video, we'll follow the creative process starting from scratch, and I will share a super important artist's secret to get the best possible start. Make sure to stick to the end because I'll also suggest a couple of fun exercises you can do if you want to follow along. So, how does art start? It has to start somewhere, but contrary to a common misconception about inspiration, the idea of the final painting doesn't simply appear like that in your head and all of a sudden, like an illumination. It's a slow grind, chaotic and uncertain. It's not a sudden burst of light. You know how the symbol of the light bulb is commonly used to illustrate inspiration and having an idea? Well, this is a terrible image because it's nothing like this for art. It all starts with a blank page or a blank canvas, and this is actually where most people would stop. It's very hard to face this emptiness when in front of you there's just an infinite number of possibilities. Creative anxiety is a real thing, and surprisingly, it doesn't come from a lack of ideas, but from an overwhelming number of possible, equally interesting options to consider. The job of an artist is to decide which one is the best, probably, and to make it a reality, which is even harder. So today I want to share with you a simple trick. Like, it's stupidly simple, but it will definitely help you get a good start and figure out the composition of your future paintings early on. It will help you release your creative anxiety, explore more possibilities, and overall make you a better artist. This trick is so simple, but sadly often overlooked. Today, let's talk about the power of thumbnails. So let me grab my sketchbook and show you. Thumbnail sketches are tiny doodles that you usually make before even starting with the actual composition sketch. See, this is a sketch, but it's already quite an elaborate drawing, and it requires a little bit of thought before it can be done. A sketch is already a pretty complex drawing, and if you're at ground zero and have no idea what type of picture you'd like to make, it's very difficult to start with an elaborate sketch. This is why thumbnails are so great. Just doodle a couple of random shapes, goes very fast, and it allows to go with your instincts. A good painting starts with spontaneity, and thumbnails are all about spontaneity, which is why they are so great. What I recommend is that you start not actually with your sketchbook, but you start by selecting your canvas before you even start picking up your sketchbook and pencil. Your surface should be the primordial source of inspiration. This is the space in which everything is going to unfold. Do you want a portrait or a landscape orientation? Maybe you want to pick a square canvas, a tondo, which is a round one, or make a polyptych with multiple surfaces. Composition starts with the selection of your surface. You don't even need to touch a pencil or a brush. You are already composing by just picking the right surface. In fact, if you start with absolutely no idea of what to paint, like, you know, you want to paint something, but it could be anything and you have no idea yet, the surface itself, even if it's just white, it might still give you the primordial clue of what could be an interesting subject that could fit in this type of space. It might tell you what type of figure would look well, what type of landscape, what type of dynamic lines, what type of geometry would look nice. That's the first spark of an idea from nothing more than a blank canvas. So from now on, you know, a blank canvas is not just a terrifying field of emptiness, it's the primordial potential for your future piece. If you sometimes get creative anxiety at this point, I can only recommend that you actually learn to appreciate the blankness of the canvas and contemplate it for a while just before you start. Not just to stare at the void, but to start seeing figures dancing in the space of the future painting. This first spark of emotion is already there if you learn how to see through the whiteness. The first fragment of an idea of a possible subject is already there, but it needs to unfold. Real quick, if you like my approach, just want to let you know that I have 2 courses available. My first course is focused on oil painting techniques from beginner to intermediate, and my second course is about color theory and its application for painters. If you want to learn oil painting and color but don't know where to start, I'm sure they can help you. So you'll find the link in the description. All right, let's go back to the video. For figurative painting, we are going to need a model or reference to paint from. So let's start with that, right? Actually, no. It's too early to even start looking for a model at this point. We're still missing a step in the ladder here. This is the moment for our famous, not so secret. Most artists start with a lot of miniature scribbles that don't look like anything serious, but are actually crucial for the entire process. These tiny thumbnails are actually the size of not necessarily a thumbnail, but a small post-it note or stamp. And the super important part here is that they should be made before finding a model, and more or less, they should follow the proportions of the original canvas. They don't need to have the exact same proportions, but have approximately the same shape. So what's the point with these? The point is to let the creative side of your brain run free with the least amount of effort and pressure possible. It's just so small and quick that you can make 4 or 5 in a row, no problem. It's a great way to quickly visualize and compare composition, geometry, dynamic lines, balance and imbalance, rough placements of the figures. And even if it's just very rough and only you can see anything, you will understand what it means. Even if you're the only one to understand what it.
Hey guys, my name is Daniel and
Yes, we know your name,
painting.
Daniel.
Even if you're the only one to understand what it means and what it's supposed to be, that's not a problem. In just a couple of minutes, you can experiment and test multiple options. It's much more efficient than drawing a more elaborate sketch, which takes time and effort. These thumbnails can be made effortlessly, and that's the whole point. I don't recommend tracing the edges with a ruler. It's better to do it freehand because it's more spontaneous this way. You can make them side by side to compare, or just erase roughly and start over on the same one. It doesn't really matter, but I suggest to keep them so that you can have a comparative view of them side by side. And don't be afraid to be very vague and rough. It's a draft of a draft of a draft. That's the entire purpose. Sometimes what I do is that I only trace dynamic lines, trying to divide the space of the composition with no clear intention. And I let the pencil tell me what to do next. And just like that, out of nowhere, I somehow realized that, oh, this could lead to an interesting composition. I realized that maybe a figure could fit there, or another one here or here, then a background sort of like this or like that. And it's not that I figured out the entire project this stage, it's just that I start with something rather than nothing at all. And all of this happens spontaneously, which is the point. I always draw at least 3 or 4 of these before I start looking for a model. They don't cost much to do and they can be done on the fly. So what next? Once you have a couple of small thumbnail sketches, you can select the best idea for your composition and decide what to do next and where to go. Now it's really time to start looking for models based on your initial idea that you've just doodled in your chosen thumbnail. If you want to ask a model to pose, now it's the time. If you need props, need a background, if you need to go look for images online, now it's the time. Now with your model or your reference pictures in place, you can start drawing the complete sketch. And for this one, I usually take my time to get something more precise. It's still a draft, so no need to make something super sharp and detailed. But one very, very important thing for me at this stage is to make sure to draw the sketch with the same proportions as my canvas. For example, if my canvas is 120 by 100 centimeters, I will trace in my sketchbook, I will trace a rectangle with identical proportions. So let's say 12 by 10 centimeters. Then what I like to do, but this is a more personal preference, is I draw the thirds and the median lines, and I try to articulate the main points of focus around the intersections of the thirds. The purpose of these lines is mainly to follow the geometry to get a nice dynamic composition. But these lines serve a secondary purpose. They make some sort of a basic grid, which is very helpful when the time comes to draw the same composition, but on the real canvas this time. With these lines, I can be more or less certain that my figures are in the right place, approximately, and at the right size. And it makes the switch from sketchbook to the real canvas more convenient and more fluid. And from there, the actual painting can start. So that's a different story for a different video. But I hope that you realize how much the thumbnail sketches help. They can bring a nice boost in the early stages, which are sometimes tricky to do and painful. Drawing thumbnails is just great to gain speed and spontaneity. It propels the project forward and allows the ideas to come naturally. That's why they are so important to become a more productive artist and a more spontaneous artist at the same time. All right, so now a couple of fun exercises you can do at home if you want to practice doing those small miniature sketches without relying on your own paintings. Number one, take your favorite art book, a pencil, an eraser, and a sketchbook. Then try to draw a quick miniature for your favorite compositions. And don't hesitate to be very rough. It's not a copy here. It should be done in less than a minute or two. Just look for the main lines, just the basic geometry, characters, points of focus. Regarding the characters and the figures, just avoid the details of the face. Avoid anything that would just take too much time, would just make you struggle. Just stick with the basic proportions, the basic position of the figures and the contour. You can learn a lot from your favorite compositions by doing this. And if you do several of them, you'll most likely realize that they have something in common, like a certain type of geometry or lighting or subject placement or something like this. Exercise number 2. Now you can try to get creative and try to get in the shoes of the famous artist that you draw after. Try to imagine how their composition could have been different and imagine different versions of the same piece. For a single master painting, try to come up with 1 or 2 alternative versions. Imagine how the picture could have been different. It's a pretty fun exercise and requires creativity from your part, which is nice. All right, that's going to be it for this video. So if you like this video, remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe.
Okay. Any thoughts about any of that?
Thumbnails are important. I don't do them nearly enough.
Mhm.
But however, I agree with his first statements about having too many ideas.
Yes. Well, and see, that's the thing, you know, it's like, it's not that you don't have ideas, it's that you have too many ideas. And one of the ways of getting rid of some of those ideas is to do a series of thumbnails. You know, okay, well, I'd like to try this. Okay. And so you put it down in the thumbnail, and then you discover, oh, okay, maybe that's not as good as I thought it was. And so what can I do, you know, to make it better? Or maybe it's just a bad idea. Maybe I need to go to the next idea. But you see, you haven't committed a lot of time, you know, at that point to figure that out. See, and even the ones that you kind of abandon, right? It's still there. And maybe a day or two later, a week or two later, a month or two later, you're thumbing through the sketchbook and going, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, that one didn't work out. Okay, but maybe if I do this, see? And that's the great thing about keeping a sketchbook, which is like number one. If you're going to do anything in the world, keep a sketchbook, sketch in it, draw in it, you know, and particularly thumbnail ideas. When you have an idea, don't just like, well, that would be a good idea. All right, well, you know, now I'm going to go do my laundry. No, you know, when something kind of pops into your head, pick up your sketchbook, pick up a pencil, do a little thumbnail of it. Okay. And as he was saying, we're not talking about do a complete drawing and make it all flushed out and beautiful and stuff like that. Just do the little thumbnail. Because next week, next month, next year, right, when you're going back through that sketchbook, you're going to come across that thumbnail and you're going to know what it means. Nobody else may, and it doesn't matter, but you will. Okay. You'll like, oh yeah, that's that idea that I had and I wanted to do this with it. See, it's a good way of like, you know, jogging your memory, and then you can develop it further. See, I mean, for years, and I don't do this now, and I'm not quite sure why I got out of the habit of doing it. But I always had, when I went to bed at night, I always had a pencil and I had a sketchbook sitting right next to my bed, because inevitably I knew that I was going to have a dream or, you know, an idea, and I was going to wake up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I did, having that sketchbook right there, I could sit there and I could do a little thumbnail sketch, you know, and I would remember, you know, that image. And then I could later go back and do a painting of it. And it may not, you know, it may not have gone down exactly the way that I thumbnailed it out. But again, you know, it gave me a starting point, and it gave me an idea that all of a sudden I had an actual record of. Because what happens, at least what happened to me, is if I, you know, if I just rolled back over and went back to sleep, that idea was gone. In the morning, I wouldn't remember it. Okay, but if I stop and turn on the light, did a little thumbnail, or maybe a couple of them, closed the book, turned off the light, then rolled back over and went to sleep. You know, in the morning when I got up, I remembered those images, those dreams that I had, and I could do something with them at that point. Otherwise, they would just be gone. So, but you know, and you might want to write some of this down. My recommendation is that anytime that you decide that you're going to do a painting, and it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, okay? And it doesn't matter what media you're working in. If you decide that you actually want to paint something, you know that you're going to be making a commitment of time, because it's not going to happen in 10 minutes and be done, right? You know, you're probably looking at least, you know, a 5 to 10 hour commitment, you know.
Maybe 20.
Pardon?
maybe 20, depending the project.
Right, yeah, but I'm saying, at least somewhere between 5 and 10 hours, that you're gonna be committing that much time, right?
Yeah.
And so, let's say that it's a 10-hour painting. Okay, all right, that's gonna be a chunk of your time. So, first of all, start with doing no less than 5 thumbnails. And play with the composition, play with the size relationships of where things are. See, don't get stuck like, this has to be here and it can't move, right? But, right there in those thumbnails, play with the size relationships, change the elements, do whatever you need to do, but do at least 5. I promise you, it won't take you more than 20 minutes. Okay. And so 20 minutes to a half hour. Let's say it takes a half hour, all right, out of a 10-hour painting. So now you've got 9.5 hours left, right? So then I want you to take another 30 minutes. And the next 30 minutes I want you to take is I want you to do some value sketches. So out of the 5 little thumbnails that you made, don't make them any bigger, but do 5 more that are just no lines. It's just dark and light areas. Okay. And work out where you want the values, right? Where do I want it dark? Where do I want it light? See? And do, at least 3 to maybe 5 of those. And again, you're not changing the composition at that point. All you're doing is placing, okay, I want it really dark here. I want a mid-tone here. I want my bright light. I want See? Simple so far, right?
Yep.
Okay.
One thing that I basically did not agree with what you said initially, before you even start, select your canvas if you do landscape or portrait. But sometimes when you're doing your thumbnails, you change your idea of landscape or portrait.
Right, yeah. And I don't really subscribe to that idea of you have to work within that format of
Right.
things. Though I will say, okay, if you've got like 3 canvases in your studio and you don't want to have to run out to the store to buy another one, once you come down to an idea, then it's probably good to go look at the proportion of that and try to put that thumbnail within that scale or proportion.
What do you mean with thumbnail?
What did we just watch?
He said it many times, and I was there trying to figure it out.
It's a little tiny sketch.
Oh, a small sketch. Okay.
Yeah, it's like he was saying. Okay, if his canvas was 100 centimeters, okay, and he used centimeters, by 120, right? Then he was going to do a thumbnail sketch that was 10 centimeters by 12. So it was proportional to his canvas, okay? Now, again, if you know that you have a like 3 by 5 proportion canvas, and you make your little rough square somewhere roughly close to those proportions, that's fine, okay?
Yep.
I don't think you have to be real exact about it,
Okay.
but you don't want to do a bunch of like horizontal compositions and then turn your canvas vertically to try to paint it. It won't work out well. If you make your compositions horizontal, then your canvas needs to be horizontal, okay, or vertical, whichever one you choose. But anyway, so those are the first 2 steps. And then the third step I would recommend before you ever put, a paint stroke on that canvas is you figure out, okay, you like the composition in this particular thumbnail. You did a couple of value studies, okay? Now, same size, maybe even in the same sketch code. either in acrylic or something that will dry fast, watercolor, you know, or even color pencil for that matter of fact. Just do a couple of little color roughs, you know. I mean, you're not trying to make it look like figures and stuff like that. You're just placing color, you know, and value. And just, you know, okay, so this area is going to be more blue, this area is going to be more green, this is going to have some red or orange in it, you know, and just put down those little color notes. They're almost like little abstract paintings. And figure out, you know, what your general direction of color is going to go. Now, all of this together will take you less than 2 hours. Okay? You shouldn't spend any more than 2 hours on doing those. And again, you know, with the color, you know, maybe do 2 of them, right? You know, try one, you know, with one series of color, do it, another with another series of colors. But, you know, but keep the values close or accurate to your value set, right? And just look at the possibilities of what you can do with that. By the time you do those 3, guess what? You've got your painting figured out. So by the time you get to your painting, it's going to take you much less time to actually do the painting because you've already figured all that stuff out and you have a direction to go in. And the painting trust me, is going to go much faster. It may only take you half the amount of time to paint that you would normally. Because why? You're not mucking around, you know, trying to figure it out, you know, at a full scale size painting, which takes time. You know, it takes time to paint on a canvas, cover up an area and stuff like that. So if you can save yourself the time and doing it, you know, like 1/10 the size, you know, it's going to save you a lot of time. And you'll be able to do more paintings more quickly, and you'll have a better finished product because you have an absolute direction that you're going to go in, right? Sound logical? Yeah. All right. You guys seem so excited. I know you're going to rush right out and do it.
I've been practicing thumbnails lately, and it is very helpful, and it saves a lot of time. And when you have these fleeting ideas, you can jot them down right quick and then go back at a later time and decide on which parts of the thumbnails you want to use or which thumbnails you want to use. So I like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you personally, okay. I painted for a good number of years, you know, in a gallery before I ever went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco. And when I went to the Academy of Art and I started taking illustration classes and things and, you know, trying to build concepts and stuff like that, I was very resistant to the idea of doing thumbnails. I thought it was a big waste of time. Okay. By the time that I got through that first year of the Academy of Art, they had thoroughly convinced me that how important those steps were. Because if anything changed my ability as an artist, it was those 3 steps: thumbnail, value study, color study. You know, those 3 things, and none of them take a lot of time, but they can save you hours and hours of time. They can save you from totally mucking up and ruining a painting, you know. And believe me, you know, my previous experience was I would get to certain points in paintings and I would just rub it all out. And it's like, no, this isn't working, and walk away, you know. And in fact, I would say it was probably about 50-50. You know, out of everything I started, you know, I probably completed only 50% of them. And the rest of them, I either abandoned or walked away from, again, because I got to a certain point and I didn't have it figured out. And I didn't know how to get out of the box that I'd painted myself into, you know. And then when I actually went to school and I learned that process, my percentage rate of how many paintings do I start and I actually successfully complete went way up. And I meant way up, you know, probably to the 85 to 90% range. You know, occasionally, you are going to run into something that is going to drive you crazy, and it's just not ever going to work out. Okay, it still happens. It happens to people who have been professionals for their whole life, you know, but you'll have a much higher success rate if you'll go through those simple steps. I can promise you that. Okay.
Okay.
So try it, you know, what do you got to lose, right? You know, try it for a painting or two. And if by the second or third painting, you know, you hate that process and it's just, you don't feel it's creative and it doesn't work for you, go back to doing what you were doing before. It's fine. Okay. But at least give it a try. All right.
All right.
All right. Well, it's 12:01 and it's time to feed Armando, right?
Hold on a sec. I have a question. Doesn't have anything to do with this.
Then why are you asking it in the middle of class?
Because I like other people's opinion, because all of you American knows everything better than anybody else.
Okay.
My across the whole neighbor gave me a heater. What is those old heater they used to heat in the old time?
Kerosene.
No, this one is electric. It's those round thing. The old time they used to put oil. Okay, but my question is, this building is about 60 years old.
Yeah.
Still have the original wiring.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be safe to plug that heater in the?
Well, I don't think you're going to have a problem with the power. Okay, but
No, it's the wiring that worries me gonna heat up or something.
Say what now?
If for the wire, the cables, electric cable, they might get heat up, and you know. And
well, are you talking about on the heater itself? It might get
no, on the walls,
No. I mean, you know, when they built that building, if they haven't shorted out, you know, with you running a blender and everything else, or your refrigerator, you know, the wiring's probably sound enough in the building. Okay. The thing I would worry about is if it's an old heater, keep an eye on the heater. Make sure that the plug isn't hot or that it's not overheating.
No, it's a radiator heater. No, it's a radiator heater. It's electric.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the electrical wire. If after you run the heater for like 15 minutes and you feel the wire, you know, with going, you know, from the heater to the wall, if it's hot, unplug the heater. Okay, it's not a good sign. Right?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and and if it doesn't trip the breakers, you know, in the building.
Well, in my particular apartment, in Christmas, if I had all the Christmas light outside and the Christmas tree on, I cannot run the microwave because the breaker can't.
Oh, the breakers go off? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know.
I'd be hesitant on the heater then.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you may not want to have your Christmas lights on, you know, outside and inside, and run the heater and be trying to make, you know, your dinner at night either, all at the same time. Okay.
I know.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to put on your slippers and you're gonna have to go outside and trip the breaker again. You know.
Where do you live, Armando?
Foxcroft.
Where?
Foxcroft is on Roswell, about half block north of Arononatic, next to the school, next to the Jewish school.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now have we solved all the problems in the universe today?
Yep. And a few extras.
I mean,
Not all.
does anybody have any other like
There might be a couple ones we overlooked so far.
Okay, well, hey, look, we're open to anything. And, we all know each other, we've known each other for a while now. So, whatever's going on in life, if you got a question, put it out there.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the floor. Everybody can kind of add in their 2 cents worth. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else we need to talk about?
No,
Okay.
I'll
Well-
write it to the next class.
All right. Well, everybody go have a good lunch. Okay. I do want to remind you, tomorrow is the critique and share day. I think I have things only from 2 people, John being one of them, and I think Rebecca Pinkney.
You didn't get what I sent in? I sent in 3 pieces of the turtle I started with
Yeah, I got
on
those.
that UPO paper.
Right. Yeah, I got those.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I saw those. Okay. But yeah, just if you've got stuff that you want to talk about, then please send it in. Yes, Gene, I got 1, 2, 3. I got 3 emails from you.
That's
And then
all.
I got-
You got the original and then the 2 smaller ones to.
Yeah, a 4x6 and an 8x10.
Right.
And then
And the
John,
original, I think, is 11x14 or 12x16 or something like that. That was the one I particularly put the strokes through it to have a water breakage so that you could think the turtle is in the water. The others, I didn't put that in there. And I don't know if they look like they were in the water or not. That's to me. I don't know.
okay.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
at any rate, I got
okay,
the
that's fine.
those, and then John, I've got yours from the drawing class.
Okay. Armando, send yours in. Eloise.
Eloise, Armando, Bob, yeah. If you're working on something, send it in. We'd like to see what you're doing. Okay.
And there's no class this Friday, correct?
Oh, yeah, let me mention that. Yes, yes, this Friday is Veterans Day.
Yes.
And unlike previous years, okay, the center is actually going to close on Veterans Day. I mean, I can't remember.
We used to celebrate it on Monday.
Huh?
We used to celebrate it on Monday.
Veterans Day?
Uh-huh.
No, it was always on the date.
Yeah. Yeah. At any rate, yes. Friday is going to be Veterans Day. They are actually closing, which I'm really amazed and surprised at, because we always had, kind of we kind of always honored the veterans, at Benson, on that day.
That's what I was thinking. I was surprised when they said they were gonna close.
Yeah, I know. They had to drag me out there every year. I had to go stand up in front of
Is
everybody.
anybody cooking out?
Anybody cooking out?
Yes.
You mean for Veterans Day?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hamburgers and hot dog and something on the grill, so we can show up.
no.
You better cook out today, because Friday is gonna be like 40 degrees.
Yeah, outside. Yeah. Yeah, yes. I think, well, we're not quite over the nice weather yet. I mean, you might have a day or two when it's still nice to go outside and paint.
Mhm.
So if you want to do that between now and spring next year, I would get out in the next day or
Go
two.
now.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's pretty much going to be done with after that.
Yep. And remember the lunch on 17, you have to confirm to save your plate.
Oh, yeah. At Benson, yes, they're having the holiday dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a dancing and I don't know what else. And so,
I don't think they're doing any dancing over there. I think
well, I saw on the flyer dancing. And so I would like to see those old folks dancing.
okay. Well,
Well, get out on the dance floor then.
that's right. Better go cut a rug.
Right.
All right, all. Anybody else? Anybody got anything else? We
See
need
you
to
tomorrow, hopefully.
Yes.
All
Looks
right.
good. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, bye.